Do not let her go. The command cut through the moon harvest ball so sharply that Claire Bennett forgot, for one stunned heartbeat, that she was the woman trapped in the Alpha King's arms. A moment earlier, she had been crossing Blackwood Palace with a silver tray balanced between trembling hands, trying to become exactly what every good servant was expected to be: quiet, efficient, invisible. Then someone struck her shoulder from behind. Crystal glasses rattled. Red wine swept across her fingers. Her shoes slipped against polished marble, and Claire fell forward beneath the gaze of hundreds of nobles. She expected the floor. Instead, Alpha King Nathaniel Blackwood caught her. The ballroom went silent. Claire opened her pale green eyes and found silver gray ones staring back. Nate Blackwood was 32, feared by rival packs, respected by his council, and famous for a level of control that made even powerful alphas cautious around him. Claire was a 23-year-old Omega Maid who had dropped 3 serving spoons before breakfast last Tuesday. She knew which one of them did not belong in this situation. "Your Majesty," she whispered, heat rushing into her face. "I am terribly sorry." She tried to straighten herself. Nate did not release her. His expression had changed in a way Claire could not understand. It was not anger. It was shock. For most of the evening, the wolf beneath Nate's disciplined exterior had been restless, reacting to the crowded hall, competing scents, endless voices, and ceremonial pressure. Now it was silent, not restrained, not suppressed, peaceful. Nate had almost forgotten what that felt like. Claire shifted nervously. "Sir." His attention snapped back to her. "Stay still." A few whispers moved through the crowd. Near the royal platform, Lady Caroline Whitmore lowered her jeweled glass. Head housekeeper Rebecca Moore stared at Claire as if she had just committed the most spectacular mistake in palace history. Claire wished the marble floor would open and politely remove her from the evening. "I can stand," she said. "I know." Yet Nate's gaze had moved to her right hand. Wine glistened across her fingertips. He leaned slightly. Closer, not toward Claire, but toward the unfamiliar scent beneath the wine. Herbal. Bitter. Wrong. His entire demeanor sharpened. Where did that come from? Claire looked at her hand. "One of the glasses." "Which glass?" "I'm not sure. Someone bumped into me." Nate slowly raised his eyes toward the ballroom entrance. Commander Marcus Reed was already moving through the guests. "Marcus!" The commander stopped. "Seal the room." The enormous doors closed quietly. Conversations died instantly. Claire's embarrassment gave way to unease. "Your Majesty, what is happening?" Nate released enough of his hold to let her stand independently. Claire took one step away. The room tilted. Her heartbeat accelerated, and every sound suddenly became painfully clear. Candle flames, rustling silk, distant footsteps, someone breathing behind her. She swayed. Nate caught her again. The overwhelming sensation softened almost immediately. Claire stared at him. Nate stared back, equally unsettled. Something had changed the instant the distance between them disappeared. Neither understood why. "How long have you felt unwell?" he asked. "Only tonight." Claire swallowed. "I thought it was the heat in the ballroom." Nate glanced again at the wine staining her fingers. "Think carefully. Before you entered this room, did you notice anything unusual?" Claire closed her eyes. A narrow service corridor flashed through her memory. 12 crystal glasses. One strange scent. Footsteps approaching from behind. A gloved hand. Dark clothing disappearing around a corner. Then the fragrance that had remained in the air. Her eyes opened. "Winter jasmine." Nate went completely still. "What did you say?" "The person who bumped into me smelled like winter jasmine." Across the ballroom, Marcus had reached the fallen tray. He crouched beside the scattered glasses, examined one fragment, then looked toward Nate with sudden alarm. Nate's arm remained steady around Claire as his gaze hardened. Nobody leaves this palace. 7 minutes earlier, Claire Bennett had been standing in the West Service pantry wondering whether asking to leave her shift would cost her the job she could not afford to lose. The room was busy with servants carrying silverware, folded linens, flowers, and trays toward the moon harvest ball, yet Claire felt strangely separated from all of them. The air seemed too warm. Every sound seemed too close. She could hear spoons touching china from across the pantry and smell cinnamon drifting from desserts 20 feet away. "Rebecca," Claire said when the head housekeeper passed. "May I speak with you?" Rebecca Moore stopped without slowing the movement of her hands. Quickly, "I do not feel well." Claire hated admitting weakness, especially tonight. I feel overheated and a little dizzy. Could someone cover my first service? Rebecca finally looked at her. We are already short 3 people. I know. Drink water. Take 5 minutes after the first round. Claire nodded because arguing had never improved her position in Blackwood Palace. She had worked there for almost 2 years, long enough to understand that people remembered her mistakes more easily than her kindness. They remembered the plate she dropped during winter banquet service. They remembered when her apron caught on a door handle. Few remembered that she stayed late when another maid's child was sick or quietly repaired uniforms because the laundry staff was overwhelmed. Claire returned to work. Near the service doors waited a polished silver tray holding 12 crystal glasses. She checked each one before lifting it. That habit had saved her from mistakes before. 11 smelled like the same dark red wine. The 12th made her pause. Beneath the wine was something bitter and herbal, almost hidden by a delicate floral scent. Claire leaned closer. Winter jasmine. That is strange, she whispered. She considered replacing the glass, then stopped. If something had contaminated royal service, simply removing it would erase the evidence. She decided to take the tray directly to the senior steward. Claire entered the narrow corridor connecting the pantry to the moon court. Music drifted through the distant doors. Her steps remained careful despite the uncomfortable warmth beneath her skin. Halfway down the corridor, she heard someone approaching quickly from behind. Claire began to turn. Hey! Shoulder struck hers. The tray tilted sharply. She caught it before the glasses fell, but red wine splashed across her right hand. Excuse me, she said automatically. The stranger never answered. Claire saw only dark formal clothing, polished shoes, and a gloved hand disappearing around the corner. Then the fragrance reached her. Winter jasmine. The same scent she had noticed near the unusual glass. Claire stood motionless. Her first instinct was to follow. Her second was stronger. Protect the tray. Report the glass. She continued toward the ballroom. But within minutes the warmth beneath her skin intensified. Her heartbeat accelerated. The music became painfully clear. By the time she crossed into the moon court, even the chandelier flames seemed too bright. Claire searched for the senior steward among the crowd. She never reached him. Someone moved behind her. Her balance disappeared. Then came the fall, the Alpha King's arms, and the command that sealed the palace. Back in the present, Claire opened her eyes as Dr. Evelyn Hart hurried toward them carrying a leather medical case. Marcus approached from the opposite direction with a crystal fragment wrapped carefully in white cloth. Your Majesty, he said, you need to see this. Nate examined the fragment. A tiny silver wolf had been etched near its base. Claire recognized the mark immediately. So did every royal servant. Marcus lowered his voice. This glass did not belong to general banquet service. Nate's silver-gray eyes shifted toward Claire. Marcus finished quietly. It came from your private tray. This was meant for you? Claire asked. Nate kept his eyes on the silver wolf etched into the broken crystal. Around them, the moon court had gone unnaturally quiet, as though hundreds of guests were afraid even a whisper might disturb whatever truth had just entered the room. That mark is reserved for the king's private service, Marcus said. Claire looked at the wine staining her fingers, and the warmth beneath her skin suddenly felt more frightening. Then I should have reported it faster. Nate turned to her. You noticed something was wrong when everyone else missed it. Do not make that sound. Like failure. Claire had no answer. Dr. Evelyn Hart reached them and immediately examined her hand. Do not touch anything else, she said. She opened her leather case, removed a small glass vial, and placed one careful drop against the dried wine on Claire's skin. The liquid clouded faintly. Evelyn's expression tightened. Moonroot. Marcus looked toward Nate. You are certain? Certain enough that I want the remaining glass secured. Evelyn prepared a clear mixture and handed it to Claire. Drink this slowly. Moonroot can cause feverish discomfort, dizziness, heightened senses, and confusion. The amount on your skin appears small, but you may have absorbed enough to explain what you are feeling. Claire drank. Then that explains everything. No, Evelyn said. The answer came too quickly. Claire lowered the glass. What does it not explain? Evelyn glanced at Nate. Why his presence calms your symptoms. Claire remembered taking one step away from him and feeling the ballroom explode into unbearable sound. She also remembered how quickly everything softened when he caught her again. Nate seemed equally unwilling to dismiss it. Test it, he said. Evelyn guided Claire toward a quieter alcove along the edge of the ballroom. Your Majesty, stand beside her. Nate did. Claire's breathing remained steady. Now step back. He moved 3 feet away. Nothing happened. At 6 feet, Claire felt pressure building beneath her ribs. At 8, the rustling gowns across the ballroom became painfully distinct. Nate's jaw tightened at almost the same moment. At 10 feet, Claire pressed one hand against a chair. Her heartbeat raced. Nate stopped. His silver-gray eyes flashed with something close to disbelief. Come back, Evelyn ordered. Nate crossed the distance immediately. Before he even reached Claire, the pressure began to fade. When he stopped beside her, her breathing settled. Nate exhaled slowly, as though something inside him had quieted too. Marcus stared between them. Again, they repeated the test. 6 feet. 8. 10. The result was identical. Evelyn checked Claire's pulse, then Nate's. Moonroot explains Claire's fever and heightened senses, she said. Carefully. It does not explain the king. Claire looked up at Nate. What does? I do not know yet, Evelyn replied. But Moonroot cannot create a connection between 2 people from nothing. Before Claire could ask what connection meant, Marcus returned to the fallen tray. A guard had collected the service records from the pantry. Marcus examined the card, then brought it to Nate. The tray left the west pantry at 8:45. He pointed to the destination written beneath the royal seal. Private royal table. Claire felt her stomach tighten. So the strange glass really was supposed to reach him. Marcus nodded. Yes. Nate looked toward the sealed ballroom doors. Find out who prepared it. Marcus hesitated. There is something else. He turned the service card over. A handwritten routing note appeared on the back. This tray was supposed to travel through the private east corridor. Claire frowned. But I was assigned to the west gallery tonight. Marcus looked directly at her. Then you should never have been carrying it. Then somebody changed my assignment, Claire said. Marcus did not answer until he had compared the routing note with the banquet roster a second time. That is what I intend to find out. The Moon Court remained sealed while selected servants were quietly questioned and the remaining royal service was secured. Nate moved Claire into a private sitting room beside the ballroom, close enough that the strange pressure between them remained manageable. Dr. Evelyn Hart followed, while Marcus disappeared into the service corridors with 2 guards. Claire sat near the fireplace, turning the evening over in her mind. I was supposed to work the West Gallery, she said. I remember because Rebecca complained that I was too slow for royal floor service. Nate stood several feet away. Who told you to collect the tray? Claire frowned. Nobody. It was waiting beside the west pantry doors with the other outgoing service. My name was written on the assignment card. Nate's expression sharpened. Your name? Yes. A knock sounded. Marcus entered carrying 2 sheets of paper. We found the original staffing schedule. He placed the first page on a table. Claire immediately found her name beside West Gallery service. That is the schedule from this afternoon. Marcus laid down the second page. Claire Bennett now appeared under private royal corridor. The change had been entered at 7:52, less than an hour before the feast. Claire stared at it. Rebecca changed this? She processed it, Marcus said. But she did not request it. He pointed to a small authorization mark at the bottom. The instruction came through the Royal Council office. Nate moved closer. Whose authorization? The signature is incomplete. We are verifying it. Claire looked between the pages. Why would the Royal Council care which hallway a maid worked? Nobody answered. That frightened her more than an explanation would have. Marcus turned the altered sheet toward Nate. There is another detail. Most staffing requests say something like additional server or replacement maid. This one does not. His finger stopped beneath a line of dark ink. It specifically requests Claire Bennett. The room seemed suddenly colder. Claire gave a small, uncertain laugh. That makes no sense. Half the council probably does not know I exist. Nate looked at her. Someone does. The words settled heavily. Claire remembered the gloved stranger, the winter jasmine, and the contaminated wine. Until that moment, she had assumed she had simply wandered into someone else's plan. Now she wondered whether the plan had been waiting for her. Could whoever changed the schedule have known about the Moonroot? She asked. Possibly, Marcus said. But we need evidence before deciding why you were moved. Evelyn checked Claire's pulse again. Her reaction is already easing. Because of the medicine? Claire asked. Evelyn glanced toward Nate. Partly. Claire understood. The other part was standing 6 feet away. She rose slowly. I want to go back to the servants' wing. Nate immediately shook his head. Not alone. Claire stiffened. I am not asking permission. Silence followed. Marcus looked toward the documents. Evelyn became very interested in closing her medical case. Nate studied Claire for several seconds. Then his expression changed. You are right. She blinked. I am. You are a witness, not a prisoner. His voice softened. Choose where you want to stay. I will place guards outside, not inside. Claire had expected authority. Instead, he gave her a choice. Before she could answer, hurried footsteps approached outside. A guard entered and spoke quietly to Marcus. The commander's face hardened. When, approximately 10 minutes ago, Marcus turned toward Claire. Someone entered your room in the servants' wing. Her breath caught. Why? We do not know. Your drawers were opened, your wardrobe searched, and your mattress moved. Nothing obvious was taken. Claire stared at him. Nate's voice became very quiet. Then they were not stealing. Marcus nodded. They were looking for something. Claire looked down at the fading wine stain on her hand. Someone had deliberately moved her into the king's path. Someone had searched her room while the palace was sealed. And for the first time, Claire understood the most frightening possibility of all. The Alpha King might not have been the only target. Claire stared at Marcus. The palace was sealed. How could anyone reach my room? Marcus glanced toward the guard who had delivered the report. Because whoever searched it was never inside the Moon Court. The answer changed everything. Nate moved toward the table where the altered schedule remained beneath the lamplight. An accomplice. That is my working assumption, Marcus said. Someone remained outside the ballroom and used the confusion to search Claire's quarters. Claire folded her arms, trying to stop her hands from trembling. But what could they possibly think I have? Perhaps something from the tray, Evelyn said. A fragment of glass. A note. Anything connecting them to the Moonroot. Claire searched her memory again. She had carried nothing away from the ballroom. Then another detail surfaced. Winter jasmine. Marcus looked at her. The person in the corridor. Yes. The scent was strong on their clothing. Marcus turned toward the guard. Did anyone report seeing someone near the servants' wing? The guard hesitated. Not there, Commander. But one of the North Gate guards mentioned. A council messenger crossing the lower courtyard shortly before the feast began. Why did he remember him? The fragrance. He joked afterward that the man smelled like a flower shop. Claire's pulse quickened. Winter jasmine? I can ask. Do it, Marcus said. The guard left immediately. Nate looked toward Claire. Until we know who that messenger was, I want you somewhere secure. Claire's shoulders tightened. We already discussed this. I know. His tone softened. I was going to suggest the royal guest wing. Suggest, not order. Claire studied him. The distinction mattered more than she wanted to admit. Is Dr. Hart nearby? 2 doors away, Evelyn answered. Then I will stay there tonight. Nate nodded. Marcus can place guards in the corridor. Outside my door. Outside your door. Claire almost smiled. Less than an hour ago, she would have expected an Alpha King to treat protection and control as the same thing. Nate seemed determined to prove otherwise. Evelyn checked Claire's pulse once more. Your Moonroot symptoms are fading faster than expected. Claire glanced toward Nate. He stood about 7 feet away. But the other feeling is still there. Evelyn's expression became thoughtful. Yes. What does that mean? I need more information before I answer. About what? You. Evelyn closed her medical case. Your family, specifically. Claire gave a puzzled laugh. My family has nothing to do with royal mysteries. My father repaired farm equipment outside Cedar Ridge. My mother worked in a laundry. Your mother's maiden name? Claire paused. Bennett. Same as mine. My parents never married, so I kept her name. Evelyn became very still. Nate noticed. What is it? Possibly nothing. Claire frowned. That did not look like nothing. Before Evelyn could respond, Marcus returned from the doorway carrying a small report handed to him by the guard. He read it once, then again. The North Gate guard confirmed the scent. Winter jasmine. Claire felt a chill despite the fire. Who was the messenger? Marcus raised his eyes. He carried authorization from the Royal Council offices. Nate's expression hardened. Name? The guard never asked. The seal was valid. Marcus placed the report beside Claire's altered assignment. But now we have a connection between the person who moved Claire into the private corridor and someone wearing the same fragrance she remembers from the collision. Claire looked down at her own name written across the altered schedule. For years, she had believed being overlooked made her unimportant. Tonight, someone had selected her deliberately. Evelyn was still watching her with an expression Claire could not read. Dr. Hart, Claire said quietly, why did my mother's name bother you? Evelyn looked toward Nate, then back to Claire. Because Bennett appears in records most people in this palace have never been allowed to see. Bennett appears where? Claire asked. Evelyn did not answer immediately. She crossed to the tall bookcase beside the fireplace and pulled a narrow cord hidden behind the shelves. Minutes later, an elderly palace archivist arrived carrying a leather ledger wrapped in gray cloth. He placed it carefully on the table, bowed to Nate, and left without asking why a palace maid was standing beside the Alpha King after midnight. Evelyn opened the ledger. Its pages were yellow with age, filled with family names, faded seals, and handwritten notes. These records were restricted generations ago, she said. Only the crown, the royal healer, and authorized council members can access them. Claire leaned closer as Evelyn turned several pages. Then she stopped. Bennett. Claire's breath caught. Beneath the family name was a faded blue crescent. What does that symbol mean? Moonbound, Evelyn said. Nate became completely still. Claire noticed. You know that word. Every Blackwood heir studies the old histories. His voice was careful, but I believe the moonbound lines had disappeared. Claire looked back at Evelyn. What were they? Omega families with an unusual connection to powerful alpha bloodlines. Old accounts describe their presence as calming heightened alpha instincts rather than provoking them. Claire remembered Nate catching her in the ballroom. The instant silence inside him. The strange relief whenever they stood close. That sounds convenient. History often becomes convenient after people decide what they want it to mean, Nate said. Claire looked at him, surprised. Evelyn continued turning pages. Moonroot could heighten dormant responses already present in someone. It could explain why your senses became overwhelming tonight, but it could not invent a moonbound connection. So it awakened something? Claire asked. Possibly. Evelyn stopped at another entry. Here, Claire saw the name Margaret Bennett, dated nearly 2 centuries earlier, beside the same crescent symbol. Across from it stood the Blackwood royal seal. She was connected to my family? Nate asked. Evelyn nodded. The records indicate that the crown placed the Bennett line under royal protection after a moonbound bond formed with a Blackwood alpha. Claire stepped away from the table. At nearly 10 feet from Nate, pressure tightened beneath her ribs again. Nate felt it too, but neither moved closer. No, Claire said softly. An old book does not get to tell me who I belong with. Nate's answer came immediately. It does not. She studied him. Even if this is some kind of bond, a connection is not ownership. Something in Claire's chest eased that had nothing to do with distance. Marcus entered carrying a folder from the Royal Council archive. I may know why Claire was selected. Everyone turned. He placed an access register beside the ancient ledger. Restricted files require every reader to sign the archive log. His finger moved down the page and stopped beside one entry. The Bennett records were requested 3 weeks ago. Nate's expression sharpened. By whom? Marcus turned the register toward him. Councilman Gregory Ashford. Claire recognized the name. Ashford had served beside the throne for years, polished and respected, always speaking as though every decision he made protected the kingdom. Why would he search for my family, she asked. Marcus opened another document. That is not all. The authorization that moved you from the West Gallery tonight originated from Ashford's office. Claire felt the pieces align with frightening clarity. The altered assignment. The private royal tray. Moonroot. Winter Jasmine. Someone. Searching her room. He knew who I was before tonight, she whispered. Marcus nodded. At minimum, he knew your family records existed. Claire looked at Nate. Did he know what moonbound meant? If he read those files, Nate said, yes. Silence settled over the room. Claire stared at the crescent beside Margaret Bennett's name. Until tonight, she had believed someone chose her because she was easy to blame. Now the truth looked far more deliberate. Then the wrong question was whether I accidentally walked into a plan, she said. Her voice steadied as she looked toward Ashford's signature. The real question is why the plan needed me. The plan needed you because Ashford expected the king to lose control. Marcus placed another restricted file beside the Bennett ledger, and Claire felt every eye in the room turn toward him. I reviewed the archive notes attached to the moonbound records. Moonroot was mentioned in an old medical study as a catalyst capable of intensifying dormant wolf responses. Claire looked at Nate. He knew what would happen if I came near you. He knew what he hoped would happen. Evelyn corrected. That is not the same thing. Marcus nodded. Ashford accessed the Bennett records 3 weeks ago. His office changed Claire's assignment tonight. A messenger connected to the council carried the same winter jasmine scent Claire remembers from the corridor. Then Moonroot appeared in the king's private service. Nate's silver-gray eyes hardened. He wanted witnesses. Claire understood before Marcus continued. The Moon Harvest Ball had gathered nobles, council members, pack leaders, and influential families from across the kingdom. If the Alpha King had appeared unstable before all of them, the damage would have traveled beyond Blackwood Palace before sunrise. He wanted me close enough to trigger something, Claire said, and he wanted you exposed to Moonroot. Marcus nodded. The most likely purpose was a public loss of control. Claire remembered the moment Nate caught her. Hundreds of people watching, whispers beginning. Yet the feared reaction had never come. Nate had become calmer. Ashford was wrong, she whispered. Evelyn looked. Between them, completely wrong. Claire did not destabilize the king. Her presence did the opposite. Nate's gaze remained on Claire. My wolf went quiet the instant I caught her. The confession was simple, but Claire felt its weight. Then he built his entire plan around something he did not understand. Most people who try to control others do, Nate said. Marcus closed the file. We still need direct evidence connecting Ashford to the Moonroot itself. Until then, we have enough to question him, not enough to declare the entire matter resolved. Claire appreciated that distinction. Facts mattered more than anger. Evelyn turned another page of the old ledger, then hesitated. There is something else you both need to know. Nate looked at her. What? Old Blackwood law recognized a confirmed moonbound connection as a matter of royal security. Under that law, the reigning Alpha could require the Omega to remain within palace protection until the bond was formally evaluated. Claire went cold. Require? Nate's expression changed instantly. No, Evelyn continued carefully. The law still technically exists. Then remove it. That requires council procedure. Nate reached to his collar and removed the silver wolf clasp representing his royal authority. He placed it on the table beside the ancient ledger. Then until the law is removed, I refuse to invoke it. Claire stared at him. You could legally keep me here? Apparently. And you will not. Nate stepped toward her, then stopped several feet away, deliberately leaving the remaining distance untouched. Claire, whatever exists between us does not give me ownership of your life. The pressure beneath her ribs remained, but something deeper loosened. Even if the bond is real, especially if it is real. His voice was quiet. If you ever stand beside me, it will be because you chose that place. Claire looked at the open ledger, the royal clasp, and the man who had just set centuries of authority aside rather than use it against her. For most of her life, powerful people had made decisions and expected her to adapt. Nate had the greatest power of anyone she had ever known, yet he was choosing restraint. Marcus broke the silence. There is one way to pressure Ashford into revealing what he knows. Nate looked at him. Explain. Claire already understood. Let him see me. Nate turned sharply. Claire. He thinks his plan failed because I accidentally contaminated myself. She met Nate's gaze. He does not know how much we have discovered. Marcus nodded slowly. If Ashford believes Claire is still confused and uninformed, he may speak too freely. Nate clearly disliked the idea. Claire could see it in the tension across his face. It is dangerous, he said. Then protect the room, she replied. But do not silence me. For a long moment, the Alpha King said nothing. Then he looked at the silver clasp lying on the table and back at Claire. Your choice. Claire drew a steady breath. Good. She turned toward the doors leading back to the moon court. Hours earlier, she had entered that room carrying a tray and hoping nobody would notice her. This time, she intended to make sure Councilman Gregory Ashford did. Claire entered the moon court with empty hands. That alone felt strange. For 2 years, she had crossed these marble floors carrying trays, linens, flowers, or someone else's instructions. Tonight, she carried only the truth. Conversations faded as she walked toward the royal platform. Nate remained several steps behind her with Marcus, honoring the choice he had promised to protect. Councilman Gregory Ashford stood near the front row of nobles, silver-haired and perfectly composed. His expression changed when he saw Claire, but only for a heartbeat. Your Majesty, Ashford said, looking past her toward Nate. Surely this unfortunate incident has gone far enough. The maid was confused by Moonroot exposure. The sensible course is to let her recover and end this disruption. Claire stopped. The room seemed to disappear around her. Marcus did not move. Nate's expression became unreadable. Claire looked directly at Ashford. What did you say? Ashford turned toward her with practiced patience. You have had a difficult evening. There is no shame in being confused. You said Moonroot. A silence spread across the court. Ashford's eyes narrowed slightly. That is what caused your condition. Dr. Hart never announced what she found. Claire's heartbeat accelerated, but her voice remained steady. The substance was identified privately after the ballroom was sealed. So how did you know? Ashford glanced toward Nate. Your Majesty, am I truly expected to answer accusations from a servant? Nate descended the final step from the royal platform and stopped beside Claire. Not ahead of her. Beside her. You heard her, he said. Answer. Ashford's composure finally cracked. Information travels quickly inside a palace. Marcus stepped forward and placed several documents on a nearby table. Then perhaps you can explain how this information traveled 3 weeks backward. He opened the restricted archive register. Your signature appears here beside the Bennett family records. A murmur moved through the nobles. Marcus placed the altered staffing schedule beside it. Your office also requested Claire Bennett by name and moved her from West Gallery service to the private royal corridor less than 1 hour before the feast. Claire watched Ashford carefully. Why me? Administrative coincidence. And the winter jasmine. His eyes flickered. That was enough for Claire to know the scent meant something to him. Marcus produced the Northgate report. A messenger carrying royal council authorization was observed leaving the lower courtyard wearing that fragrance shortly before the feast. We are identifying him now. Ashford straightened. None of this proves wrongdoing. No, Claire said. But you knew my family history. You moved me into the king's path. And you knew what was in that glass before anyone publicly named it. Ashford looked toward Nate again, searching for the authority he understood. This concerns the stability of the crown. Claire felt something inside her settle. My life is not a tool for stabilizing or weakening anyone's crown. Nate's silver-gray eyes remained on Ashford. Neither is hers. Marcus gathered the documents. Councilman Ashford, your royal duties are suspended while your office records, communications, and archive access are reviewed. You will remain within the palace grounds and cooperate with the investigation. 2 royal guards quietly took position near the doors. No one touched Ashford. No one needed to. Claire looked across the same ballroom, where whispers had followed her fall hours earlier. Those faces were silent now. Nate turned toward the assembled court. Remember what happened here tonight. Rank did not notice the poisoned service. Power did not recognize the altered route. A maid did. Claire looked at him, surprised. He continued, do not mistake quietness for weakness, or service for insignificance. Then his gaze returned to her. Claire had entered the Moon Court hoping Ashford would underestimate her. He had. For years, being overlooked had felt like proof that she did not matter. Tonight, it became the reason a powerful man never saw her coming. By sunrise, the Moonroot had completely cleared Claire's system. The connection had not. Dr. Evelyn Hart confirmed it twice before allowing Claire to leave the royal guest wing, and each test produced the same result. Distance still created that strange pressure beneath Claire's ribs. Nate still felt the answering pull. Whatever had awakened between them belonged to neither the contaminated wine nor the confusion of the moon harvest ball. It was real. Yet when Claire reached the courtyard, the gates of Blackwood Palace stood completely open. Her small travel bag waited beside a carriage, and no royal guard blocked the road descending towards Cedar Ridge. Nate stood near the stone fountain, nearly 20 feet away. He wore no crown. The silver wolf clasp remained absent from his collar. Marcus says Ashford has been suspended while the investigation continues, Claire said. His records are being reviewed, Nate replied. The messenger has been identified, but I will not call anyone guilty before the evidence is complete. Claire nodded. That sounded like him. Powerful enough to command quickly, disciplined enough not to confuse suspicion with truth. She looked toward the open gate. And me? You are free to go. The words hurt more than she expected. Just like that. Something vulnerable crossed Nate's face. Not just like that. He paused. But freely. Claire tightened her fingers around the handle of her travel bag. Even with the moonbound connection? Especially with it. Even if the old law says you could keep me here. Nate looked directly at her. Then the old law can wait for me to erase it. Claire almost smiled. She turned toward the gate. 5 feet. The pressure beneath her ribs returned. 10 feet. It strengthened. 15 feet. Her breathing became harder, but she continued. At 20 feet, Claire reached the open archway and stopped. She looked back. Nate had not moved. Every instinct she possessed told her he felt the distance too, yet his hands remained at his sides. He had caught her when she fell. He had protected her when danger appeared. But now, when keeping her would have been easiest to justify, he chose to let her walk away. Claire finally understood the difference. A cage could be decorated with destiny and still remain a cage. Love had to leave the door open. She looked down the road toward the life she had known, then back toward the man refusing to choose for her. Claire released the travel bag. It landed softly on the stone. Nate's eyes widened as she turned around. She walked toward him, then faster. 15 feet. 10. 5. The pressure disappeared. Nate opened his arms, but did not step forward. He left even that final distance to her. Claire crossed it herself and wrapped her arms around him. For one quiet heartbeat, Nate seemed afraid to believe she had returned. Then his arms settled gently around her. I thought you were leaving, he murmured. I was. Claire lifted her face toward him. Morning sunlight touched the palace towers behind them. Then I realized I needed to know whether you would let me. Nate's expression softened. And now? Claire smiled through the emotion in her eyes. Now I know. She rested her forehead against him. The first time I ended up in your arms, I fell. Nate waited. Claire's smile deepened. This time, I did not fall. The palace bells began ringing across Blackwood Valley as dawn washed the mountains in gold. Their bond still held mysteries. Ashford's investigation was not finished. The moonbound records still contained questions neither of them could answer. But Claire no longer feared what destiny might call her, because destiny would never be allowed to make her choices. She had spent years being overlooked, one night being deliberately chosen by an enemy, and one morning discovering the power of choosing for herself. If Claire and Nate's journey reminded you that true strength can be gentle and real love protects freedom, like this video, share this story with someone who believes in courage and destiny, and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable stories.